One of the things that we want to say, first of all, thanks for all that have come, visitors and everyone that have showed up. I know the lights, when it comes on after it's been dark, it's a little hard, but at least I can see now who's sleeping and who's awake. Okay. So, if you got your Bibles, we're going to start in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. And one of the things that we need to understand a lot is this. Who is the enemy? What is it that when Jesus came, made a way for us? Do we know what that way is? Do we know where we're going? Do we have a clue? Do we even have a map? Sometimes we just don't know. And the writer in the book of Hebrews says this in verses 1 through 3. If you don't have your Bibles, we got it up on the screen. For those of you, whatever Bible you have, King James, NIV, ASV, TBB, whatever, read along with me and follow, okay, together, if you would. We must therefore pay even more attention to what we have heard, so that we will not drift away. Verse 2, for if the message spoken through angels was legally binding, and every transgression and disobedience received a just punishment. Verse 3 says, how will we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? It was first spoken by the Lord and was confirmed to us by those who heard him. We have a fear of water, as most of you all know. And a few years ago, when my kids were younger, we were having a family reunion on my wife's side. It was her father's 75th anniversary, I believe, and we were down in Gatlinburg. We had just come in there, and it was when Ripley's, believe it or not, had caught on fire. And so it's all crowded and everything, and so everybody's gathering in there, and we actually were staying kind of right behind it, and you could smell the smoke or the remains of the fire. And so we go over to eat, and all of the kids want to do something. My kids are teenagers, and they've got a couple cousins and stuff, and they're all teenagers and everything, and so they wanted to go rafting. Okay? Well, the problem was, none of the other adults would go with them. And they had to have one adult. And my kids are saying, Dad, why don't you go? Listen, my son's names were Tim and Tom. I said, you don't understand. I don't like water. And I definitely don't like water in a raft. Because there are rapids there. And there's not much you can do once you put that raft in the water. And they said, well, come on, Dad, just go ahead. So how they ever convinced me, I have no clue. I think that day I was out of my mind on something. I don't know what it was. Because I definitely wasn't thinking too much, because we go to the place, we rent the raft, and they say, okay, here's what we're going to do. You guys are late. The other people have already gone. They're going to be waiting for you up there. And what we're going to do is we're just going to drop you off, and everybody's going to be right there together, and you just follow everybody. Well, they lied. Everybody got there and left. And we were there. And we get in this raft, and the first thing that happens is we get stuck on a ledge. And the water is deep after that. And they said, Dad, what are we going to do? And I says, I don't know, let's just scoot. You ever seen 5 kids and a grown man scooting in a raft? Okay? Here's the illustration. Well, we finally got off that, but the kids got out of the raft and they said, Dad, you getting out with us? And I said, no. Well, what happens if we drown? I'll pray for you. Because if I go in, you're going to have to save me, and I don't think you can. So anyway, we get on this raft, right? Well, you know what happens when you put a raft in the water? It just drifts. And you have no control over where that thing goes. Because we didn't have paddles. They don't give you paddles. You just get in there and you just go, and the rapids and the water would just take you. Now here's the problem. Some of those rapids are like this. And there was one spot where there was a fork in the water. Which way do we go? I said, I have no clue, but it's going to take us somewhere, and hopefully it'll come back together. And so there were some young ladies, and they were flirting with my son. And they didn't care where they were going, just as long as they stayed close to the ladies. Here I'm praying the whole time, God, get me out of this thing. How long is this thing going to last? And then we get to this one spot, and it says, you need to get out here because there's rapids ahead of you. And you need to see if you want to go through it. Well, we got out, we looked at the rapids, and I said, I'm done. And they said, Dad, what are we going to do? And I says, well, I'm right here. The raft is back there, so what do you want to do? You want to carry it? Oh, no, Dad, we want to get in the water. Okay, just remember, here's where you're getting out. Well, they got there with the girls. And I'm standing there and I'm watching, and here's a couple guys in kayaks. And they're coming through the rapids, and the next thing you know is you see that kayak rolling upside down. Do you understand? Rapids, water, rocks. Dude's got a good close-up of whatever was underneath there. Me, I'm watching to see if they're coming back up. They did. Next thing I know, I see these 5 kids coming down through there, and I'm watching as the rafts go like this. And I'm thinking, are they ever going to get out? Now they did. The girls that were flirting with them didn't realize that they were supposed to get out. They went on down the river. I had no clue where they ended up. Okay? I didn't read anything in the newspaper. But do you understand what happens in life? A lot of times what you're doing is you're in the raft and you're just drifting. And you have no control over where you're going. You have no control over where life is taking you. You have no paddles. And so life just continually goes on and goes on. You hit the rapids, you hit this, you hit that. Sometimes it's peaceful. Sometimes it's a tumult. Sometimes you may have hit a level 5 where you don't even know that you're going to get through this thing. And that's what life is as we begin to drift. And a lot of times what's happening, though, is that in this life as a Christian, we shouldn't be just drifting. Because there's dangers in drifting. Because you hit those unexpected spots and you don't know what to do. And this is what the message is all about today, and that is this. Life is kind of like going down the river. At first, when you're a kid, man, it's fun. It is a ball. You just think there is nothing that can hurt me, nothing they can do to me. I just go out there and we live like nothing's going to ever happen. And then all of a sudden we get to be an adult, right? And I don't like the rules at home. I'm moving out, and we're doing the Jefferson song, I'm moving up on up. And so we move out. And then all of a sudden we go looking for a place to stay. And we go looking and we find this place and it tells us, how much? I'm still working at McDonald's, and how much is this going to cost me? 4 checks, it ain't going to cut it. I got to get another job or another job. And then all of a sudden it's like, I got the job, I got the place. This is really neat. I got 4 walls and no furniture. I got a stove, but no pots and pans. I got a refrigerator, but I don't have any money for food. What am I going to do? I know, Mom's cooking. I'll just go over to the house and I'll just tell her I just happen to be in the area and just kind of show up. And then we find all of a sudden life isn't so good. Because all of a sudden things changed and things are different. But let me say this, Christians, we can't afford to drift in life as a Christian. Because when you look at the world is ungodly. We look at the world and we say that, well, the world is so much different than it was. As we were talking in Sunday school, if you go back into the book of Leviticus and you look at what God was saying was going on during that time and frame of the children of Israel when they came out of Egypt and they come into the promised land, and God was telling them the things that was wrong in the world. Let me say this to you, that it was the same thing that's happening today. We look around and we say the world is so much different than when we grew up. Yeah, it probably is. Because part of it, we didn't know it was going on. We didn't have 24-hour news. If something happened halfway across the continent or the world, we had to wait for them to get it all back here. But now, we turn on the TV, it's news here, news here, news here. If something happens, somebody's right there instantly. And they're doing this. And we look and we see all of the things that's going on. I mean, you know, you think about it. The case of the little girl in North Carolina, how they said that she just disappeared in the middle of the night. Come to find out the boyfriend killed her. How many stories have you heard like that? Multitudes of them. We ask ourselves, how could somebody do that? Because the world, ladies and gentlemen, is ungodly. That's how. God gave us this warning. He says that the intent of man's heart is evil continuously. It's got to change. And in the book of Hebrews, it begins to tell us how that change comes about. Such a great salvation that was brought to us through Jesus Christ. To change that. But the problem is, if we as Christians continue to drift, we're not going to make a change. What's happening is we're letting the world change us instead of us impacting the world. Why? Because we've drifted too long. It's time that we grab hold of some paddles here, some oars. His name is Jesus. And He wants to show us and direct us. Because the reason that we can't reject this salvation or this gospel, ladies and gentlemen, we talk about Christmas, and the reason we can't reject it, it's a gift. How many of you all have ever had somebody give you a gift and say, I don't want it? Well, I want to give it back to you, and the person says, no, I can't take it. It's a gift. I bought it for you. And so what do? You generously take that gift. Then why is it that we have such a hard time when God Himself gave us the greatest gift for us receiving that gift? He gave His life. You know how much it cost Him to buy that gift that He wants to give us through salvation? Not cheap. It costs the greatest gift. Why? Why can't we neglect it? Because it's the only gift that I know that is so powerful, it will cover sin. It will conquer. The Bible says death, hell, and the grave. He did that. Amen. There is no other gift that you can ever find, buy, or see or inherit or anything else that will ever cover your sins. Amen. Only Him. Amen. Only Him. And that's why we can't neglect the gospel. This is why we got to tell people about Jesus. The third thing is because it's available to everybody. I hear people say there is so much social injustice in the world. There may be, but let me say this to you. God is not an unjust God. He is a just God. He says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. He didn't say if he did it in church, in your car, or wherever. He says whoever, whenever, and wherever. There is no place. Because he just says that today is the day of salvation. Right now, this very moment. Why? Because you never know where you're going to be the next moment. You have only the promise of the breath you're taking right now. That's right. And it may be your last. And the question is, then why are we neglecting the gospel? We need to understand that God, ladies and gentlemen, we can't drift if God is a navigator of our life. He won't let us just drift. I'll guarantee you, He will point you in the right direction. I love to cruise. You get on those big ships and you got this little rudder in the back of that ship that guides that big ship. Well, let me say this to you all. God's bigger than that rudder. He will control everything that is around that. And may I say this to you, if you are fighting against God, ladies and gentlemen, you can't control the current of your life. You have no idea what's going to happen to you tomorrow. He does. You don't know what's going to happen to you in 5 minutes from now. He does. Do you know He's preparing you for the next moment and the next moment and the next moment? As the Bible told us in Psalms 139, He says, I have wonderfully made you. I have shaped you. I have put you here for a purpose and a plan. I know which river you're going to take. I know the path that I want you to go on. And the longer that you fight me, the harder it's going to get. He says, give it up to me and let me be your navigator. My wife and I took a trip to Alaska a few years ago, and we're going back again next year because it's really neat. But there's one spot coming back from Alaska to the United States that you got to go through these straits. And what ends up happening is this. There is a tugboat that comes alongside of you, or a boat, and there is a captain that gets off that boat, and he becomes the pilot of the ship. The captain of the ship, of that cruise ship, has to release the realm of that ship to that pilot. Because if he was to try to navigate that big cruise ship through those small straits, it probably would hit a lot of rocks and everything else. But this pilot of this ship, he does this time after time after time. And so when those big cruise ships come through there and that pilot gets on board that ship, you don't have to worry because he knows right exactly where everything's at. May I say this to you, that what you need to understand is to get off the pilot of your ship and turn control over to God, because He can get you through the straits of life, because He knows where all of the hidden things are. You don't. You only see what's on the surface. You don't see what's underneath. And when we were in Alaska, and we're sitting there and we're watching these glaciers, okay, breaking apart and falling, and they're saying, this is really neat. See how close we're getting to these things? And everybody's just in awe and awesome, and you get caught up in the moment, and you start seeing this ice just pass by you, and you're thinking, this is fantastic, watch. And you watch as this glacier over here just starts falling into the water, and it breaks apart, and all you hear is this whoa, and you watch the water all fall around it and everything, and you're just caught up in the moment until you realize, Titanic? There's more ice under the water than there is above the water. All I'm seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. May I say this to you? Don't you understand that all you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg? God is the one that knows everything that's underneath there. When the things start falling off, He's well aware of what's going on and what's happening. We need to do this. Why does it say, it says not to neglect the salvation? Let me say this to y'all. You need to make time for church, even if it's a small time. You want to know why? The more time that you give to God, you will find more time to do everything else. When we sow sparingly, we reap sparingly. You know why a lot of you are running around trying to find out how to do everything in the time that you've got? Because you're running around trying to find out how to do what you need to do, and on your list of to-do things is not God. God's at the bottom of the list. If I got anything left over for you today, God, I'll give it to you. And God's saying, I don't want your leftovers. I want your best. We all the time talk about, I want to tithe my money. Y'all need to start understanding about tithing your time. And what I'm talking about, it doesn't mean time for church is not just sitting in here on Sunday morning. Okay? That's wonderful and excellent that you all are listening to such a wonderful message this morning. It's going to be the best one you're going to hear today. Because for a lot of you, it's going to be the only one you're going to hear today. Okay? But if you don't get it, you can catch it later on Facebook. Because it'll be posted. And you'll get it for the second time and the third time and the fourth time. And do this. But time means, how many people do you tell about Jesus during the week? How many people do you share the love of Jesus with during the week? How many times do you walk in the supermarket, and right now, this is an excellent time, honestly. This is the best time of the year because there are such a bunch of grumpy people all over the place. If they were to smile, you would think that they just bought a sale, okay? But what you got is you got a bunch of grumpy people looking for something that they can't find, okay? And I'll be one of them because I can't find it, what I'm looking for. But I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to get grumpy because we're going to find some people that are smiling. I was yesterday, it's just awesome because I walk in the store and I'm looking for something and I can't find it. And I walk up to this lady and I said, do you guys carry this? And she says, you know what, I don't know, but I think we should. She walked me all through that store. We couldn't find it, they don't carry it. But not one time did she stop to complain, except, I don't understand why we don't have that. But all through there, we're carrying on conversation. Like, hey, how's it going? How was your Thanksgiving? You know, did you have a great time? You know, you got kids coming over for Christmas and all this stuff, and just having a great time. Do you know how many people out there right now are just wanting someone to talk to? Do you know how many people that you're going to meet on the street somewhere, someplace that's going to be lonely? They're going to be sitting there by themselves. They're shopping by themselves. They go to the store because they want to get out of the house. They're not there to buy anything. They just want to meet people. They just want to talk to somebody. Ladies and gentlemen, that's church. Church isn't the walls. Church is outside the walls. We come here to worship. The church goes to the world and beyond. And this is what we need to understand. We've got to take time to do this. We've got to take time to pray and attend church because God will multiply your time. He does. I've shared. This is like, got to go teaching Sunday school because I get into all this stuff. I've shared. I have people all the time say, how in the world did you work and pastor at the same time? And I said, because I knew how to manage my time. And they say, well, what about now? And I said, man, this is terrible. I've got more things to do today than I ever had. And they said, why? And I said, because I'm sitting in there dreaming. And God is just filling it up. And somebody said, are you asleep? No, I'm awake. Okay? It's just, okay, God, what do you want? What do you want us to do? Where do you want us to go? What do you want to move? God, who's coming in today? Whose life do you want us to impact? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to say? And it doesn't matter. I get more done than I ever got done in my life. And then I find I still got more, and I keep thinking, God, you know, I'm going to live a long life because He's got a bunch of stuff for me to do. I hope. But in Luke chapter 6 and verse number 38, He says this, He says, give and it will be given to you. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure pressed down, shaken together, and running over will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. You know what happens a lot of times? And I don't have a little cup or anything, and this is bad. Can I use your purse?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay. Now here's what happens a lot of times. What we do is, this is what we give God. God, fill this up. He says, okay, I'll fill it up. And we think, wow, God, thank you for your blessings. That was really neat. You gave me this. No. Fill it up, Lord. Let it run over. When we start giving God the little stuff, no. This is why Jabez said, Lord, ever increase my borders. Don't let them stop. God, what can you do today? This is why David said, my cup runneth over, Lord. Don't just fill it up, run it over. Why? Because I don't know about you, I want more than just one or two little blessings. God, sorry guys, but I want it all. But guess what? He's got enough to give me all and give you all.
Yeah.
All. That's how big God is. But what we want to do is, what we do in the morning is we gather our little thimbles and we say, God, fill this up today with your blessings for me. What we need is one of these big, huge, humongous wash tubs. And if you ain't got one, you need to go find one. And if you can't find one of those, just go get you one of those big things at Farm and Fleet or Tractor Supply that they feed cattle with. And sit it in the middle of your floor and say, there's my cup, Lord. Fill it today, would you? So many times, what we want to do is we want to say, God, here's a little bit that I'm going to give you, and God, just bless that, would you? And guess what you get? A little bit. But when you give Him all of it, guess what you get? You get it all. Every bit of it gets blessed. And this is what He's saying. He's saying, listen, we need to understand these things. And what we need to quit doing is worrying about being politically correct. Okay? I get caught in this all the time. I'll be talking to a group of ladies, and I'll say, hey guys, come here. I'm sorry, ma'am. And I'm trying, you know what, when I was little, man, everybody was guys. It didn't matter whether you were male or female, everybody was guys. And that's what we did. Hey guys, come on, you know? And everybody knew what we were talking about. Okay? But today, you can't do these things. There are so many things that you got to be so careful about. Because why? We got to be politically correct. Well, let me say this to y'all real quick. God is not politically correct. He is neither Republican or Democrat or independent or libertarian. He is not a socialist. He is God. I hear people all the time say, God gave me this win today. Oh, and then He gave that guy the loss, right? After you just beat somebody to death? No. We want to give God the credit for a lot of stuff, but a lot of stuff ain't God, guys and gals. And what we need to understand is God's not asking us to be politically correct. What God is asking us to be is biblically correct. And when the politics and the laws go against the Bible, God says you have every right whatsoever to disobey it. And if you go to jail, you suffer the consequences of man, but you never suffer the consequences of God. Matter of fact, he said, I'll bless you. Talk to Paul. Talk to Peter. Talk to Silas. These guys, man, they went against the political grain. They told them, y'all ain't going to preach no more. We weren't called by you to preach. We were called by God to preach. You may tell us to stop and you may let us go, but guess what? You're going to run us back out of town because we're coming back. If this is where God wants us, this is what we're going to do. And we're going to continue to do it. And the majority of them gave their life for him. They weren't worried about being politically correct. They were worried about being biblically correct, because at the end of time, we don't stand before man as our judge. We stand before God as our judge. So quit worrying about what man can do to you, and be very concerned about what others. If we stop drifting, what are we going to do? Or if we start drifting, your interest in the Word starts waning. You start drifting in your prayer life. Everything just starts going down and down and down. Hebrews 10, 24 through 35. Linda, if you would, skip the next slide and go. And let us be concerned about one another in order to promote love and good works. He says, not staying away from our meetings as some habitually do, but encouraging each other, and all the more as you see the day drawing near. One of the things that we do in this church, and that is this, and some of you are well aware of what we do. If you aren't here in 2 weeks, we send you a card. We want to know what's going on. Why? Because I learned the longer you stay away, the third service gets easier to stay. The fourth service gets easier to stay. The fifth service gets easier to stay. Once you've been gone for about 2 months, most of the time, you're gone. And something is going to bring you back. And I pray to God it isn't something. This is why he says, listen. He says you need to be concerned. Now I understand there are times you can't make it. I understand that. Totally understand that. Okay? But sometimes what we do is we begin to drift. And as we begin to drift, Satan is going to give you every little excuse. And you ain't going to have to find any. He'll give them to you. You say, how do you know? Been there, done that. I've done that for a few years. I know. And I know what it's like. But let me say to you, I know the other end of the coin too. And the flip side, and I know it's a lot better than that side because it's there. We never talk to others about Jesus. We no longer feel close to God because we're drifting, and we're drifting away from him. You need to let him take care of the oars, guys. And you need to let him handle these things. So what do we need to do? You ever watched a glider or an airplane coming in on a landing? Been on one? And you're sitting there and you're watching as they're just kind of level things out. And then all of a sudden, a wind comes. And you start praying, God, let that pilot know what he's doing. I don't know if he's ever practiced this one before, but I hope and pray that he's done it in a simulator enough times that he knows what he's doing. Let me say this to you. Whenever there's a rough spot in your life, you don't have to worry about the pilot knowing how to handle this thing, because God's been through it before. How do I know? Because the Bible tells us that Jesus has experienced everything that we've experienced, yet without sin. So he knows what's going on in your life. He was tempted like you and I were. He had Satan come up and beat him, and try to destroy him. He had Satan taking the mob and pressing them to him, trying to get him to the back of the cliff and going over until God takes over. And God says, not time yet for him to die. He's out of here. I got another place I want him to go. And everybody looks, and where's Jesus? God's got him somewhere else. Let me say this to you. There are times in your life you need to understand that whatever you're going through, God can take you over it if he wants to. If he doesn't, he will take you through it, and it'll be okay. Just like the disciples When they were going through the storm, Jesus said, I'll get you on the other side. What did he do? He said, winds, stop it. Waves, be still. And it just became like a mirror on that lake. Because God can make it calm if you'll let him. We need to understand that no one sets out to bury themselves in debt. No one sets out to be an alcoholic. No one sets out to be a drug addict. They don't set out that way. But it happens. Because why? They begin drifting and drifting and drifting. No one sets out, but what ends up happening, ladies and gentlemen, is we continually make small choices. And those small choices become bigger choices and bigger choices and bigger choices until the next thing we know, we're drowning. And we need to give it back to him. What happens when we drift, ladies and gentlemen? We give in to temptation. So the question this morning to you is this. In 1 John chapter 2, verses 15 and 17, it says, do not love the world or the things that belong to the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For everything that belongs to the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride in one's lifestyle, is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world with its lust is passing away, but the one who does God's will remains forever. You want to leave something? Leave a way to show people how to come to God and what he wants to do. So the question today is this. Are you going to continue drifting as they get the song of invitation? Or are you going to let God take control of the oars? Every time I get on a cruise ship, I pray. Even before I get there, Lord, I don't know if I'm going to come back from this one. And if I don't, I know where I'm headed. And if I do, I've been a few more places that I probably haven't been. And God, I just get to see a lot more of your handiwork. And it's just awesome. Just where you take me and where you let me go. I never ever dreamed that I could go into places like this. But at the end of the day, here is what I say. God, I thank you for the day. And I thank you for everything that you've done in my life today. It's been totally amazing. But I know one of these days I'm going to get to go home. Real home. And I can't even imagine, as he sang the song, I can only imagine what it's going to be like. When I close my eyes in death, and I get to open my eyes in glory, and to see what he's got, this is awesome. Words could never express what it is. But you know what? I'm not drifting there. I got somebody that's taking me there. He knows the path. My question to you is, are you letting him guide you? If you aren't, would you today? Let's stand together, would you?
Hello, this is Pastor Chuck Cotton from Calvary Baptist Church. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for taking the time out to either listen to our sermon or to watch it on video. We are grateful that you've actually taken the time and hope and pray that it has been a blessing to you as it was to us as we delivered it to our congregation. We ask if you have any questions whatsoever that you email us at pastorchuck@calvarybaptistmiddletown.org, or you could come in and give us a phone call, if you would please, at area code 513-423-7251. I'd like to take this opportunity to also invite you to come to our church and visit us, if you would please. We actually have small groups on Sunday morning starting at 9:30, with our morning worship following at 10:45. Prior to our morning small groups, we also provide donuts with coffee, milk, orange juice, a time for fellowship, get to know each other, have a good time before we actually break out into our small groups for Sunday. Our worship services are uplifting, they're fast moving, and everything in our service is just a fast pace. But we do take time every once in a while to slow down as we feel the Holy Spirit moving, and we never want to hinder it in any way. We also have on Sunday evening, and during the school year, we have Awana, and Awana starts with the Puggles, actually from age 2 all the way up through high school. And during that period of time, we also have a worship service. Both of these start at 6 o'clock and end at 7:30. Our Wednesday night, we have a Bible study, which starts at 7. We generally finish about 8:15. We would love for you to come and visit with us. Don't have to dress up. Just come as you are, because to us, it doesn't matter. You're a child of God, a creation of His, and so to us, you're important to everything that we do. Our motto here is building the kingdom one life at a time, and we hope that we have a chance to visit with you, get to know you as you get to know us. So thank you, and may God bless you.